You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. It's your boy Pat Lane here, as always, with my guy Matt St. Jean. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the official daily fantasy sports app of CLNS Media. Download it, put in the promo code CLNS. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. And we're also brought to you by Game Time. You can use Game Time today. Download the app, put it in CLNS, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase through Game Time. Matt, here we are, and of course, we're talking Patriots, but there are three other sports, but no one cares about the Red Sox. There are two other sports going on right now in the playoffs. The Celtics with a big Game 4 win, which, by the way, it's fitting that this is the only game that finished within 10 points because Donovan Mitchell didn't play. And it was like you knew for a fact as soon as they announced Mitchell was out, it was like, oh, it's going to be a close game because you knew it was going to happen, and it did. But the Celtics won. The Bruins, however, did not. And as crappy as the Bruins have been playing, and they have been playing crappy, they have gotten absolutely railroaded by the refs. It is incredible. The duplicitous nature of the way the refs and the league have handled this series is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the history of the NHL, it's very believable. But it is ridiculous. And, I think it's easy to look at the series and, it's 3-1. And I think Florida has largely outplayed Boston and say, it is what it is. But I was going through earlier today, the site Money Puck, they do like the analytics for hockey.
Yep.
And 5-on-5, the series has been pretty even. Slight edge to Florida, but pretty even. The big difference has been what has happened on power plays and penalties. And the swinging moments of this series, it's Boston down 1-0, gets a rush, can't get a goal off of it, and then Lori comes back down the other end. You get a double minor for high sticking, which was legitimate. Florida scores 2 goals there. But later on in the game, you have first of all, in the PK, you're down Brad Marchand.
Right.
Or he was concussed playing through it. I don't remember what stage of the game they were at that point. Later on in that game, he had a goaltender interference 100% because Aaron Ekblad pushes Lauko into the goalie.
Correct.
Called on Boston. And then you find out in between the games, oh, that weird hit that Brad Marchand took. Like I think everybody kind of watched it. Or like, man, that's weird that Brad Marchand went down from that hit. Like, oh, my first thought is he must have been injured before.
Right.
Took a hit, hit him in a spot where he'd been injured before and made it a lot worse. And that's why he was hurting so bad. Then you find out after the fact, wow, it certainly looks a lot like we don't have a good angle on it, but it certainly looks a lot like he got sucker punched in the head by Sam Bennett. And then right before Game 4, we finally get the definitive angle that was withheld from the team, showing that is exactly what Sam Bennett did, punching the captain of the opposing team in the head, concussing him during a playoff series, knocking him out possibly for the rest of the series with no penalty, penalty in game, no fine, no suspension from the NHL. And then for that player to then score the game-tying goal in Game 4 on a power play that Florida shouldn't have had, because he cross-checked a player into the goalie and then scored, and then to have that reviewed and deemed legal is absolute insanity. And we're talking, we can talk about the Bruins blowing a 2-goal lead. They had to play 8 minutes shorthanded in the third period. That doesn't help you. Like there are a lot of issues with the Bruins game, and there's a lot that can be pointed out. That they had to play 8 minutes shorthanded in a single period, and at least 4 of those minutes, I think 2 of the calls there were probably legit, or at least within the realm of being legit. 2 of those minutes came from an interference call that just was not interference, and the other 2 came from the challenge on what was definitely goalie interference. Completely ruins the game flow. completely puts the Bruins in a bad spot with no hard to fight for yourself in that situation.
Well, and that's really what it comes down to, right? For me, is that interference call was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. It's they used to have the old flopping rule. Maybe they don't have. Maybe that rule doesn't exist anymore.
They do embellishment. They called it in the series. I'm pretty sure, or in the Toronto one.
That's what I mean. So like, hello, that's embellishment. Like the dude never even got touched, and he flailed onto the ground as if he had been shot by a sniper. And so the Bruins get a 2-minute minor. And then on that 2-minute minor, like you say, Sam Bennett checks Charlie Coyle from behind. It's a cross check from behind. It's a clear cross check from behind.
Yeah.
And he goes flying into Swayman, and Bennett puts it in the wide open net because Charlie Coyle's on top of his goaltender. Now, you can make whatever argument you want. Well, maybe Swayman wouldn't have gotten there, and maybe blah, 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 blah. All that crap doesn't matter. The fact is that Charlie Coyle should have been able to make a play on the puck. He couldn't make a play on the puck because he got cross-checked in the back by Sam Bennett. Then, to add on top of that, he lands on the goalie. The goalie who maybe he never would have gotten over there, but he might have. You got to.
When the rule doesn't say it's not goalie interference if he might not have saved it. If you hit the goalie at all, it's goalie interference. Like
so the explanation. What's crazy to me is that the explanation. Everyone's looking at it like it doesn't make any sense. What the NHL rules committee says makes no sense. Well, he hit him clearly, but the contact wasn't enough to cause goal. He landed on top of the goalie. What are you talking about? Do you think that contact wasn't caused? Do you think that Charlie Coyle just dove into Swayman because why? Like a phantom hit or something? Like it's insane to me to think that wasn't intentional by Bennett to push him into Swayman. And listen, you can get away with it. And Florida's a better team. Florida's a better team than the Patriots anyway, than the Bruins anyways. I get that. They're a better team. So like they should probably win the series anyways. But that's why it feels worse when it's like you just giving it to them. Like they don't need your help. Well, and that's the frustrating part.
And at that point in the game, it would have been, if this was called correctly, it's a 2-1 Boston lead in the third period and the Bruins have a power play.
Right.
And if the Panthers go on to win it from there, they go on to win it from there. It was Barkov who scored what ended up being the game winner. That was a sick goal. That was a great play. As a hockey fan, I'd love to be able to sit back and appreciate that. And you'd be like, you know what? Tip my cap. They made a great play. They deserve to win the game.
Right.
Can't do that. And I think obviously, and the thing we haven't talked about in any of this is that they had to play this game without Brad Marchand. Like, obviously, there's the whole discipline to Sam Bennett. You're down your captain for the game. And I thought the team came out with great energy. Charlie McAvoy with that big hit early on, setting the tone. Pasta, giving a little punch after the whistle, which I liked, getting them into it, setting the tone early. But it was just the refs inserted themselves into the game in the third period when the Bruins had the lead and completely changed the tone of the rest of the game. That said, there's still hockey left. The series has been relatively close when it's 5-on-5, and I wouldn't be shocked if the NHL steps in and the Bruins get a couple extra power plays in their favor Tuesday night. That just seems like something like that. Seems like the way the NHL would handle it is to be like, oh, we do realize we kind of messed this up. We're gonna call it a couple extra power plays. Like it's 100% something they would do. And the Bruins get this to Game 6 and get back to Boston. Anything can happen from that point. This is where the Bruins were against the Panthers last year. They were up 3-1 and they lost it from there. So
I wouldn't hold my breath. I also think I wish Jim Montgomery had come out strong and said something because that to me is one of those things that I get it. You're going to get fined and whatever. Like it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Every single person that watched the game knew that was meant, except for Sportsnet, whoever the hell those people are. And I'm sure the Florida people were sitting there saying, it wasn't a penalty. I'm sure those guys are telling you it wasn't a penalty. But everyone in the world knew it was a no goal. And they were trying to justify it on the broadcast. The guy was like, well, maybe based on the rule, it has to be a penalty, which isn't true. But maybe it has to be a penalty, and you can't call a penalty after a review. And it's like, well, wait a second. If you can't call a penalty after a review, if that's the case, then what are we doing? So,
Well,
anyways, all right.
It did feel like they were also incredibly confused, searching for literally any kind of explanation.
I know.
On the Montgomery thing, I will say I was a little annoyed that he didn't say more. I was reading a little bit. I got to read more into it. It sounds like a bunch of the coaches and owners and everybody before the season kind of got scolded by the commissioner, and we're told like we're upping the fines and the punishments for anybody who speaks out about officiating. So with that context, I actually kind of like the way Don Sweeney handled it today, basically being like, yeah, we're as confused as you are. Go take it up with the league.
Right.
And I also like that in the sense that there's still hockey to be played and can't change the past now. So send the questions and the story up to the league where it belongs. Bruins focus on the hockey, try to get back into the series because they steamrolled Florida game 1. They won in that building this year in this series. You win game 5, anything can happen. So.
True. All right, let's get into Patriots. So the Patriots had rookie minicamp this week, and look, Drake May, worst quarterback pick of all time. The Patriots are supremely regretting their decision because Gerard Mayo said he has a lot to work on. I've never in my life heard a coach say about his rookie he has a lot to work on. Never heard it before. Have you ever heard that before? You ever heard anyone say that, Matt? Because honestly, if that's what the coach is saying in public, imagine what he's saying behind closed doors. If he's saying he has a lot to work on, what else could he possibly say? That must be the worst draft pick of all time. And the Patriots must be really regretting what they did.
It's kind of astonishing to hear a coach comment on players needing to work on their games. That doesn't seem like his place at all.
It's incredible. Tom Brady's the greatest player of all time. Tom Brady would come into training camp and Bill would be like, yeah, there's a lot of things we have to do. But, it's just, it's like, what are we talking about, man? I just, that type of stuff is hilarious. And the best part about that is that the full quote is like, he's got a lot of work on, just like everyone does. But, you guys didn't see it, but he was here all night because he wants to learn everyone's things. And so he's praising them at the same time. It's so ridiculously outlandish. And then you get the side-by-side videos of Jaden Daniels and Drake May throwing. And they're like, well, look at how slow Drake May was. And look at how quick Jaden. And I'm like, what are we doing right now, dude? Like, what are we talking about? We've been watching their film for months. For months, we've been watching their film. Like, what the release looks like. It's not like he changed his release. It's so foolish. It's so foolish.
How insecure do you have to be in the pick that your team made to be doing that kind of posting before a single before a single snap in pads?
Anything, literally anything, right?
Yeah, has happened. Really, really funny posting from some Washington fan that was comparing the what was it? The throwing times to get the ball out of Jaden Daniels on Drake May and 2 random clips from
and then my favorite one was a different guy posted about the velocity of the throws, and it was like a 4-yard out for Drake May. The guy was like 7 yards away from him, and it was like a 15-yard comeback run. It's like, oh, you think Jaden Daniels maybe threw that one a little bit faster? I wonder why he threw that one a little bit faster. It's like, what are we talking about, man? It's just. Man, that type of stuff, I'm just like, just stop it. Like, just don't post stupid crap like that.
Yeah.
And like, we don't know.
Good.
But no, we don't know what the case is. And listen, Jamari says that May needs to speed up his release. I'm not saying he doesn't need to speed up his release. I'm not saying, but I'm also not saying, like, he's also not, it's not Tim Tebow out there. You know what I mean? Like, he's fine. Like, he's not, but he's a lot, he can grow, and he has a lot to grow. And that's the whole point. Right. And so it's not as though he's the fast release in the NFL, but it's not super slow either.
Well, and if Drake May is going to be working on his throwing motion and trying to quicken up his release, that's probably not happening until next spring. This summer is going to be about learning the Patriots playbook and getting himself up to speed in the offense. And any mechanical stuff is probably going to happen on his own with a private coach in the offseason before his sophomore year. So, he might need to do some work there. I think consistency with his throwing mechanics is probably the big thing.
Yeah.
And that is something he can work on here. Which, I from everything we saw at camp, he's with Alex Van Pelt a ton. He's with TC
Yep.
McCartney a ton. He's with Ben McAdoo a ton. He's always with one of those three guys. And they're coaching him up, and they're working through not just physical reps, but mental reps, which is exactly where they should be at this point. And it seemed like they had Drake May talking about, they're at practice and they're doing lifts after, and then they got meetings and they're going to the hotel and all the players are hanging out there and they're meeting one another and they're going over the stuff. And it's all football all the time, they were saying. And that's exactly what you want at this point in the process.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that I take out of it is that it seems as though, and of course, who knows, but it seems as though Jalen Polk and Javon Baker are becoming close. And they're already kind of following each other around and that's really cool. Like, that's one of those things for me that it's like, okay, these guys need to grow together. They need to develop that chemistry. And of course, Polk was at the Bruins game with May last night. Mm-hmm. And so, like, those are the types of things you like to see, is that team building and that camaraderie. And look, I have no idea how Gerard Mayo is going to be as a coach. I don't know. But I will say, I think he's big on that. And I think that that's going to be something that's going to be a point of emphasis for the Patriots this year. And look, whether that shows on the field or not, I don't know. But I just feel like if you have a team that really, really likes each other and really plays well together and plays for each other, then that can help. And especially a young team, I like the thought of that quite a bit.
Well, and it's big for building chemistry and development and work ethic. I've talked about it before when you talk about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady in that era in New England. One of the big reasons that they were so good is because Tom Brady put in crazy extra amounts of work, often with his teammates, but just the fact that he was always in the building, he was always doing stuff, drives the other guys to do stuff. If that's the standard that these new rookies are setting, to always be in the building, to always be grinding, to always be, trying to improve, that you're setting that new culture. And it sounds like, that's what's coming from the top two. That's what's coming from Mayo. It's fun and they're all friends, and that's great. But it's clear that the emphasis here is on getting in the work together.
Right.
And that's how you improve. And obviously, it's not going to happen with all these players. I like this draft class. They're not all going to be stars. We're going to go into next offseason looking for needs, trying to fill some holes. And if you already have that culture in place, and you look at Houston this year, they're able to go out and add somebody like Stephon Diggs to the room in year 2 of a rookie quarterback. Why? Because with that coach and that quarterback, they feel very solid about where the locker room is, and they feel very confident in their culture. That's where you want to be in a year. Forget the on-field results, culture-wise. You want to know you got the quarterback, you got the coach, and they have built a room with the players where everybody is the best version of themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, we'll see kind of how it goes, but I do think that they're working well together. And that's why it's like, I wouldn't count out Gerard Mayo just yet. I don't know. People are up and down on him. Someone mentions Coach Underwood. Taekwon Underwood, let me tell you something. That man, like, between the jacket and the hair and the visor, like, whew, that dude, man, it's awesome. It's awesome to see. I always like Taekwon anyways. And so for him to be back is cool. And so, I like the idea that he's there and he's bringing energy and what's his face is Hightower's bringing energy. Like, these guys, these guys are doing that. And so that's one of those things for me that's like, I like that aspect of it. Now, again, who knows, but I like that aspect of it. That they have kind of this young coaching staff now. Of course, they got some old veterans there too, but they got this young coaching staff that's kind of bonding with the players and going with the players, which I think is great. So,
and I like it. There's obviously, I think, a little bit of hesitancy there on my front, just because they're all so young. But it's, like, there's some risk there because you got a lot of guys who are unproven as coaches. But also, if it pays off, you have an incredibly young coaching staff that relates very well to the players, which we've already seen. They're all guys who are very smart. So if this works, then you could lock in a really good coaching staff at a lot of positions for a long, long time.
Right.
And yeah, that's it's always cool to see some of these guys back in New England too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, Dante Hightower is just so cool. Like you
Yeah.
can't not love Dante Hightower.
I mean,
I'm
come on.
glad he's around.
You know, I wish he would unblock me on Twitter, but what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? So, but well, yeah. So apparently, someone thought we were serious about calling out Gerard Mayo for saying his players stink.
Oh, that was all.
I guess we didn't have our. I thought
sarcasm.
I had my sarcasm voice on. Maybe I didn't. I apologize
Yeah.
about that. But what are you gonna do? So I was imitating Plaxico Burress. I almost pulled out my gun and shot myself in the leg, but then I remembered I don't have a gun, and so that'd be difficult for me to do. But
my first thought when I saw that is, why are we asking for Plaxico Burress's opinion on anything?
Well, because it was like the Craig Carton show, and it's like a Jets show. So it's like it's a New York show. So why wouldn't you have whoever you want on? Because we're
going to listen to the tax cheat and the guy who shot himself in the leg talk about the Patriots head coach. Like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So, what are you gonna do? You got to. Hey, listen. As I said, I was saying to someone, they were like, well, "Who talks about this shit?" And I'm like, "It's May. Like, what do the people got to talk about? Like, who?
Yeah.
Like, you got to fill the time somehow. We're talking about things. You got to talk about something. So let's talk about how much the Patriots, are upset about their pick because the coach said the quarterback needs to work on things. Oh, okay, all right, because that's not coach speak.
I will say, I do hope Mayo can learn how to say nothing at all a little bit better over time, because it's going to come under scrutiny and people are going to come up with weird stories about this. And it's fine now when it's May. The last thing we want is it's like end of October and the team's 3-5 and somebody takes a quote out of context or something like that. Now it's a cycle during the week when you're trying to get ready for, a possible trip to London or whatever.
Well, and that's a good point, because right now it doesn't matter. It's the offseason. It makes no difference, right? And especially where the quote is the quote. Like, it's there. You can see what he said. But you're right. If you take something out of context there, and it's like it's the middle of the week and they're trying to get ready and there's a little bit of distraction. So, we'll see. So the one thing about rookie minicamp that I think is interesting is that they do sign some of these guys that they invite to rookie minicamp. And so they signed 4 of them. And Old Man Mob was talking about, oh boy, hold on. Oh, I thought I was going to sneeze. Old Man Mob was talking about one of the running backs, Terrell Jennings from Florida A&M, who, by the way, if you haven't seen it, Taylor Kyles posted a video of him, and he jumps over a tackler, and then as he jumps over a tackler, like lands and then jukes out another guy too, like as he lands. I have no idea how he did it. He's a little bit of a bigger back. I like the idea of him. They cut Keyshawn Vaughn, however you pronounce his name.
Keyshawn Vaughn.
He gone. They signed Ryan Johnson, who is from Youngstown State. They signed Jay Person from Chattanooga, and they also signed Jotham Russell, who is an international pathway player, who's a former rugby player, who, by the way, is 20 years old. And so has never really played football. But I love the idea of bringing in a guy like this. The Patriots have done things like this, where they did it with Jakob Johnson. The Eagles did it with what's his face, Jordan Mailata. And so it's like, take this guy in. He's super young. He's wicked raw. He's got tons of size and strength, and he's used to contact and stuff because he played rugby. And so, stick him out at the end and see what you get from him. And you have the international pathway program, and so he doesn't take up a roster spot. So if he doesn't ever play for you, you don't lose a roster spot before it. Yeah. But you can sit there and say, hey, let's try to develop this kid. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But we have him here. And I love that aspect of it. And so I'm excited about that one as well. But, and that's the interesting thing. And who knows if any of these guys will actually make the team. But the fact that they made it through these kind of rookie minicamp invites and got a contract from the Patriots and will get to training camp most likely. And then we'll see what they do in training camp. And so they needed another running back. Jennings could be an interesting guy for them as Old Man Mom mentioned, he's going to compete with Kevin Harris for that RB3 spot. And Kevin Harris is fine, but he's nothing special. And so, if Jennings can give them something, then maybe he kind of slides into that running back 3 spot. And so,
I don't.
so we'll see.
I'm still a little uncertain on Jennings. He's an older guy. He's not fast at all.
Yeah.
And I think running back is one of the easier spots for an undrafted free agent to make a team. I think I look at the depth chart, and my first thought is they need to add another veteran body. I'm a little surprised Keyshawn Vaughn got cut because he's shown some stuff with the Buccaneers the last couple of years. It wasn't great, but he has some history of production in the NFL. And he's been with the team for a bit. They claimed him off waivers, or they signed him to the practice squad or whatever back in December. So he's been around the building. So yeah, I was surprised that he was the one that got cut. And we'll see what happens, with the other running back there, Jennings. 1,800 career yards in college, 24 touchdowns, played in 44 games, just 700 yards last year. It's not numbers that jump off the page. So we'll see how he is in camp. I think he's definitely on the outside looking in, and we'll see how many running backs they decide to keep. But Jonathan Russell is definitely the name that I'm watching here, just because of the age and athleticism. And, he played rugby. This dude can tackle. That he can play in space, and he's moldable. So I think ideally he's probably a guy you keep and stash for a year on your practice squad and then see what happens after that. I'm also I'm interested in Johnson. I don't know much about him, but he's older, he's experienced, and he's played guard and tackle in his college career. Started 13 games at Youngstown State last year at guard. They need depth at guard, and they're going to have a lot of bodies fighting there. I think he's going to have a real hard time jumping some players. But if they don't like what they're seeing from Antonio Mafi, Jake Andrews, if we'll see what happens with Cole Strange and City So, and they signed a couple of veterans on the inside, including Michael Jordan, and they had another undrafted free agent already. I think Charles Turner at center. So a lot of bodies there. But that's an I think guard, interior offensive line is another spot as an undrafted free agent where you can absolutely make a team.
100%. And I think, so we'll see. But I'm interested to kind of see where it goes with those guys. And again, he's 6'4", 240, at 20 years old. And so I'm on board with that. And then, like you say, the offensive lineman, the linebacker, we'll kind of see where how that plays out. But again, hey, they got invites to rookie minicamp and then they got a contract. So that's great.
Yeah, good for them. Make a little bit of money here.
And then see where it goes from there, So anyway, so look, rookie minicamp, there's not a ton to take out of it. I mean, look, the wide receivers are running on air, and it's like nothing's happening. So we're excited that they're on the field. We're excited that there's things going on, but there's really nothing happening. So it's like, I mean, hey, it's cool that there's something going on, but there's really nothing going on, in my opinion. So,
and there, it seems like it's mostly all normal stuff. You get through this weekend and there's no like bad. Obviously, there's the Mayo quote. But there's no real bad stories. There's nobody got hurt. There's no controversy. You didn't get out there and, oh man, Drake May can't hit anybody. Like, no, he looked like a quarterback. It looked like exactly the player that we've all watched on tape. So It's nice to, confirm your priors there. And thought Polk and Baker looked good from the limited opportunities we saw. What I liked? Caden Wallace. First of all, I really like listening to him speak. He's got a great voice, and he's a very confident speaker. So I like that. But he was talking about playing left tackle. He said he played left tackle in practice all the time at Penn State, which I thought was interesting. And he and Layden Robinson were functioning as the left side of the offensive line there in minicamp. So we'll see how that looks once we get to real camp, once we get pads on. But he seems very confident in his abilities to play the left side. And if they did get a guy who can be even a spot starter at left tackle there at that point in the draft, I think you got to be happy with the value of the pick.
Yeah, 100%. And look, and again, it's funny because we were having this conversation back and forth, and I forget who asked us. It might have been, there was someone in the Scotia chat, I think. Anyways, John, I'm not sure, who asked us about, what does high floor mean, right? We say high floor, low ceiling with a guy like Caden Wallace. And To me, all it means right there is that he's a guy that you feel like can be an adequate producer. But he's never, like, to me at least, Caden Wallace, maybe he'll surprise us, but to me, Caden Wallace doesn't have the potential to be like a top 10 tackle in the NFL. He just doesn't. I just don't see that from him. Could he be a starter? Yeah, he could be. And, the projection is difficult. But again, even if it's a spot starter, of course, at 68, maybe you want something more than that. But those guys were already gone. And the Patriots tried to move up in the first round. Allegedly, they were trying to move up for a wide receiver, not a tackle. But either way, it could have been a situation where they tried to move up for those guys and couldn't get any, right? And so then they went with their highest tackle on the board and, and felt that, those guys might be better. So, look, you can take shots. Amarius Mims is an example of a guy, right? And Amarius Mims obviously went very early in the draft, but you're just taking a shot at athleticism, right? Can we mold that guy into a player? Because the physical tools are there. We don't know if everything else is there. And so Caden Wallace, to me, isn't that guy. He's a guy that was a decent starter at Penn State. I feel like he has skills that can translate to the NFL. He's never going to be a star in the NFL, in my opinion, but he's a guy that could be a consistent role player for you. And I feel like, yeah, of course, he could be terrible and suck and never play, but I think the likelihood of that happening isn't very high. I think that he's a competent player. I just don't know if he'll ever be a great player. And that's when we say things like high floor, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep. Another note from minicamp, Jaheim Bell apparently had the catch of the day when what they were able to watch, tracking a ball from Drake May over his head.
Shoulder.
Which,
yeah, it was a nice catch.
Yeah, which he's another guy who's very much like he's raw, despite playing a lot. He's a very good athlete, kind of not sure where he fits in an NFL offense type of guy. He's the kind of guy where if you can find ways to get the ball in his hands, I think you're going to be happy with the results.
Exactly.
Getting there can be difficult. So if he can be a guy who can catch the ball over his shoulder down the field regularly for you, a seam player, a big slot type guy, yes, that could be very helpful.
I agree. So, yep. So that's mini camp. I just don't feel like there's a ton more to talk about with mini camp. So, of course, we'll kind of be keeping an eye on what's going on. I'm sure that the guys will probably stick around, especially the rookies. I'm sure will stick around the area and continue to work out and continue to study and continue to do things. So, so we'll see. And then of course we're only 2 months away from training camp. So. We're getting there. We're getting there, boys and girls. And so, we got to hold off a little bit, but we're almost there. So anyways, all right. So let's take a break. We'll come back. We're going to talk about tonight the top 3 and the bottom 3. We're going to do this. It's going to be a 2-week series. Top 3 and bottom 3 off seasons. So not draft, but off seasons in total. I think we disagree here a little bit, which is good. The top 3 and bottom 3 off seasons of teams in the AFC this week, and then next week we'll see teams in the NFC. So we'll take a break, and then we'll be right back to talk about that. Prize Picks has something for every sports fan, from basketball, baseball, and hockey to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick LeBron, Aaron Judge, Connor McDavid, and Jude Bellingham all in the same entry. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Now this week, I'm actually going with Aaron Judge, Rafael Devers, and Bobby Witt Jr. to have over 1.5 total bases, and I'm going with Kevin Durant for more than 28 points and Nikola Jokic with more than 10 rebounds. Download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, if you download the app today and put in the code CLNS, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, so let's get into this. Do you want to do top 3 first or bottom 3 first? What do you want to do?
Let's end on a good note. So let's do the bottom ones now.
All right. I like it. I mean, I'll go first, And I'm
Yeah.
just, well, I think we'll kind of talk about them and go back and forth. Number one for me is the Dolphins. And again, I didn't necessarily rank them from worst, but I just think, the bottom three for me, they lost like a billion guys, right? They lost Xavier Howard. They lost Andrew Van Ginkel. They lost Jerome Baker. They lost Robert Hunt. They lost Christian Wilkins. Now, they signed like Jordan Brooks and Shaq Barrett, who like they're fine, right? They brought in
Aaron
Jordan
Brewer.
Poyer, right? And they signed Kendall Fuller, I think, too. But like, I just feel like I didn't love what they did. They went after Chop Robinson in the first round of the draft, who like is pretty good, but like I feel like they already have edge guys. And I know those guys got hurt. And we talked about this kind of after the draft, but like I just thought that there were more pressing needs for them than that. But I just thought the team just is a worse team than they were at the end of the year last year, and that's not a good place to be.
Well, and I think most importantly, they didn't address their weaknesses.
Right.
Like in some, like I also have Miami on my worst list, and I like some of the things they did. Like I think Malik Washington and Taj Washington, both of those receivers,
Right.
where they got them in the draft, amazing scheme fits and great value at that point in the draft. Kind of like the Odell Beckham signing for them too. I don't hate they added Jonnu Smith. I don't hate that. I like the Aaron Brewer edition, but you put the whole thing together, and right now they have a team that is essentially built to play high scoring games and high scoring games only. Like it's a team that's built to play on a track. Their interior offensive and their offensive line as a whole. You got Teron Armstead and Isaiah Wynn holding down the left side of your line. That is a very injury prone group. You got Austin Jackson, Robert Jones on the other side. They improved their depth a little bit on the interior with Aaron Brewer being there, but it's not much better. This is a group that's going to have to win based on scheme and situation. They're not going to be able to like power run the football on you when they need to win games. Defensively, it's the same type of thing. Like I like Zach Sealer on the inside. I still think he's good, but they are much weaker on the defensive line. The exception of they got their speed rushers. Like, yeah, they got Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson on the outside and Bradley Chubb and Shaq Barrett. And, if you get down to Miami and, they can let those guys tee off on you and they got a good secondary behind them still, like, yeah, you're going to have issues. If you're a bad team playing Miami, you're going to have a bad time. If you're a good team playing Miami, though, if you're a physical team playing Miami,
Yeah.
I think they can still get bullied. They can get bullied off the field. And not using a single draft pick on the interior of I don't think they used not a single draft pick on the interior of the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball when Garden Center, your worst spots last year, and where you just lost Christian Wilkins.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. And some of these guys you drafted, like they don't looking at our lads right now, their depth chart, they don't have a single rookie in a spot to start, which is partially, the strength of their roster. They do have a good roster. They didn't need that. They also drafted the guys at positions where they're not going to be seeing the field probably all that much in year one. They're going to be rotational guys, and that's fine if you're a team that, is just in the AFC Championship and you're building for the future and you're trying to build sustainably. It's not fine when you're a team with glaring holes.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Who do you got? Do you want to name one of your guys?
Yeah, let's see who else I got on my list here.
Because you both have the Dolphins, right?
Yeah, we both have the Dolphins. I gotta do it. I'm gonna go with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Really?
Entirely for the QB room.
Okay.
I don't get it. Like they got some decent, and I like some of the things the Steelers did. I like their draft, but you're rolling into the season like you have a decent team, and you roll into the season with an aging Russell Wilson, who is not at all a scheme fit for what the offensive coordinator you have likes to do, and Justin Fields, who has looked fine at times, but I'm also not at all convinced is a scheme fit for what that offensive coordinator wants to do. And like, it kind of feels like with the quarterbacks they have, their best case scenario is 9-8 and maybe a 7 seed getting blown out in the first round of the playoffs. I'm just like, why? Like, I liked some of the stuff they did, but I'm especially now with what Atlanta did, a little more confused. Like, why weren't they in on Kirk Cousins? I feels like with where some of this roster is, and with the offensive coordinator you bring in, Kirk Cousins is who you would want there. I don't know if they have the cap space for him, but
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I had the Steelers as one of my best ones. And so really what it revolves around for me is the draft, right?
they
You
killed the
get
draft. I don't have any comments
right,
there.
you get your starting left tackle, your starting center, right? And I think, Mason McCormick is a guy that can probably start right away at guard. And
Yeah,
so you're talking about potentially 3 starters in the offensive line.
your
You
whole
add
left
Roman
side.
Wilson, you
Yeah,
add Peyton Wilson. They added Patrick Queen as well from a division rival, which I think is interesting. So those are some of the things for me where I look at it and I just say, hey, like, yes, the quarterback is rough. I understand that, and I don't love the quarterback situation, what they did there. However, they also paid nothing to get either of those guys, right? They're not tied long term to either of those guys either. So I believe you can get out of the Wilson deal, correct? They can at
yeah.
least.
No, they can move on quick. I mean, that's the thing. I don't. They're getting what they're paying though
Right,
at the most
right.
important position in
Well, and
sports.
and you're right about that, but I think the idea is they didn't love Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles, right, at 36 years old. They certainly didn't like Kenny Pickett, and they knew they were too far away to really have a chance at any of these top quarterbacks. And so the thought process, I think, was, well, let's take a shot. Let's see what we have, and let's see if we can make it work with Russell Wilson. If we can't make it work with Russell Wilson, let's see if we can make it work with Justin Fields. And if we can't make it work with either of those guys, then we cut them both at the end of the year. Well, Fields becomes a free agent, but we get rid of both of them at the end of the year and we start fresh. And we draft another quarterback. And maybe we move up and get and look, again, maybe that's not the right play. I don't know. But if you fix the offensive line and then you hit on a late round quarterback or you sign a quarterback next year. What if they sign Dak Prescott next year and they're just set up to be
That
like,
and
and so
that's interesting.
that's kind of where I'm lying with. And I get it. I understand, like, they didn't address the quarterback situation, and that's a problem. But for me, I look at it and think that's a team that is set up for the future. Questions at quarterback, which of course is a problem, but you already have a good defense. You've added to the defense. And then, I think you added to that offense. And of course, the offensive line, I think they've kind of fixed that offensive line, which was
Yeah.
really, really necessary. And I
No,
think
I like
that's big for me.
what they did with the offensive line. I just trading away the Deontay Johnson, getting
Right.
Dante Jackson back. I didn't love that move for them. I personally don't love the Patrick Queen signing for them. I
Yeah.
don't think he's going to be bad. I'm just not sure he's going to be as good as they think he's going to be for them. And they got a lot of good bones on this team, but they're also entering a season with either Van Jefferson or Scotty Miller or Calvin Austin or Quez Watkins, or probably all of them, playing a significant role for them at wide receiver this year, and really no answers in the quarterback room.
Yeah, not ideal. Not ideal. You're right
Yeah,
about that.
and that's
Not
what
ideal. And
I'm also not a huge Arthur Smith fan, so I also didn't love that was the
well,
offensive coordinator they ended up. I will say, I think he fits. I think Arthur Smith is good at making a mediocre group look competent and like being able to put some of those players to succeed. It's just that sometimes I think he gets a little bit too creative when he just has good players who can win matchups for him.
right. I agree with you.
So
And
this is my
by the way, and so Ray points out that Cousins is way better than Russell Wilson. And I agree with that, by the way. I just think that they looked at it and said, we can get, him for free as opposed to paying $100 million guaranteed for Kirk Cousins. And
yeah,
that was the
they
thought
should.
process, I think.
I think
And
to me
so
it's also with where TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick are in their careers. I think I would have preferred a little bit more aggression at the quarterback
I can see
position if
that.
that was.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So, all right. My second pick is the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns, they just didn't do anything. They didn't have a first or second round pick. I took them in the show draft, and I was like just sitting around. Well, maybe they had a second round. Did they have a second round pick? I think their first pick was in the 50s. I think. I can't remember.
Man, I'm already losing it with the draft.
But either way, it's like, dude, the
Yeah.
Browns they had nothing. They didn't do anything flashy. They traded for Jerry Jeudy, who stinks. They still have Deshaun Watson, who looked awful last year. They did nothing. They did nothing. And Ray, it is for worst offseason. They did nothing. And so they added James Winston and Tyler Huntley. So they got that going for them. But like I didn't understand the thought process behind that. And that was the thought process for me looking at this. And I looked at it and just said, like, what? I don't know. I didn't get it.
Well, and their big offseason move really is firing Alex Van Pelt and bringing in a new offensive coordinator. Their entire offseason revolves around making the Deshaun Watson thing work. So that's what they're trying to do. And I don't think it's going to, but they kind of have to. Like, they've backed themselves into this corner, and they don't have any outs for at least another year here. So kind of just have to try and see if you can make it work. The Browns, it's funny because we never got the chance, but the Browns to me were a team where I think I would have been interested in taking Bo Nix if he's on the board when they pick in the second round, because you don't, or Michael Penix if he's there, because you're like, all right, you can take a cheaper investment as a fail-safe in case whatever happens with Deshaun Watson. Instead, both of those guys are gone in the first 12 picks. You never have a chance.
Right.
But
by the way, so their draft picks this year, Mike Hall Jr. from Ohio State, who I loved. So that's a great.
Yeah, I like
tackle.
A lot.
I liked him a lot. Zach Zinter, guard from Michigan, who tore his ACL, right? Tore his ACL last year. So
he broke a bone. I don't remember. It was in the
Ohio
State
did something.
Game.
I remember that. I remember the injury, and then they drafted Damari Thrash in the 5th round. And so
I like Thrash.
Fine.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not. It doesn't move the needle for me. Mike Hall might.
No.
But it doesn't move the needle for me in any of those spots, and so I just felt like I didn't love it.
They're the same team that they were last. Here's the thing I will say, I like Ken Dorsey as an offensive coordinator. I'm gonna go with one of. I had 2 different teams for my last spot here, and I think I know who your other team is. So I'm gonna pick my other one because we could talk about Ken Dorsey and offensive coordinators when we get back to your team. My pick here for worst, and this is going to sound weird because I actually liked a lot of the individual moves they made. It's the Las Vegas Raiders for one reason and one reason only. You hired Tom Telesco as your GM, a guy who has been one of the worst GMs. You get to watch draft Justin Herbert and then entirely squander a team around him. The Raiders got a front row seat for that show in LA the last couple of years to watch them completely squander a great quarterback, and said, yes, please, we'll take that. I don't understand. And I think the Raiders actually did. I liked a lot of their draft moves. I'm 50-50 on the coach. I liked a lot of what he did at the end of last season. Mm-hmm. I just can't tell how much of what happened last year for the Raiders was the post-McDaniels bump and how much of it was, actually having a good coach. I liked that they set up the team so that in theory they can drop in a quarterback next year and be in a decent spot. But I don't know. You're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Andy Reid and Jim Harbaugh, and you're going to settle for a retread like Tom Telesco at GM. Like, I feel like you got to be aggressive. You got to do something different if you're in that spot. Like, you're in a very difficult spot in terms of situations in the NFL, and why not push the envelope and get creative? This is the time and place for it.
Right. I can't disagree with you at all. And, I think that their first 2 picks, they drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, who I think is a great pick for them. And of course, Brock Bowers. The Bowers one is interesting because they drafted Michael Mayer last year. And so you kind of wonder, like, are there better picks at 13? But at the same time, if Brock Bowers is as good as we think he's going to be, it's not a bad problem to have 2 really good tight ends. And so,
Yeah, well, especially because Bowers is a lot more of a slot guy anyway, and
Yeah.
a schemed touch guy in a lot of ways too. And you can use him as a big slot. And I actually I like that the Raiders' approach was basically to be simple and just say, yeah, you're gonna let us take two guys who many consider Brock Bowers was a guy who people considered a top 5 talent, top 8 talent in this draft. I'll let him fall. All right, we'll take him. Jackson Powers
Right.
Johnson was a first round talent who I think had that injury issue or whatever. You let him fall out of the first round. All right, we'll take him.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I like that approach of just keeping it simple. I actually did like a lot of their draft for that reason. I like Tommy Eichenberg for them, which I think is another good one. Um, but it's just one of those.
Yeah.
It's like they're still. I I want to see what they do with Devontae Adams, honestly, because I feel like you got to trade him at some point here to start the next phase of your rebuild to get
It's a
some ammo back.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre. They're just in a bizarre situation, right? And I think who knows what Aiden O'Connell is going to do. Feel like he's not the guy, but maybe he is. I don't know.
Well,
I feel pretty confident saying he's not the guy, but he's here, and you see what you can do with him, I guess. But yeah, I don't like it.
What if Mayer and Brock Bowers end up turning out to be, what we think they can be? The Raiders might have like a top 5 skill group in the
Sure.
AFC this
Yeah.
season, and they're just not really going to have anything else around that. Like they're just spare parts. They're the what do you call it? The car with the expensive rims that's all
Right.
broken down and beaten up.
Yep.
Which for where they are in their process, it is going to be a rebuild for them. There are worse places to be, but
Yeah, I
I
agree
just
with
do
you.
not. They're going into a rebuild and think they hired the worst possible person for it. So until I see Tom Telesco start making some smart moves, I'm out on the Raiders for now.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So, all right, here's my last one, and I know you disagree with me, and so this will be a little bit of a fun conversation here. But my last one is the Tennessee Titans,
Mhm.
and I
Oh,
just
I thought you were going a different route here. So okay,
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
well, there you go. Tennessee Titans for me. They spent like crazy on the open market, right? They let Derrick Henry walk. They replaced him with Tony Pollard in a fairly expensive deal. Then they sign, Calvin Ridley to a massive contract. I just fine, but like I didn't love it. Um, and so and again, it's not the worst thing in the world to do that, obviously, right? The draft is pretty good. You draft J.C. Latham and then Tavondre Sweat, which I think is really solid. So those first two guys I think are really good. And you're talking about building kind of that interior of the offensive. Well, I, of course, Latham is a tackle, but the
Mhm.
interior of the defensive line, and then adding on to that offensive line, which they really needed as well. And so, look, whether it's a home run or not, I don't know. I just feel like I don't get it. I don't know if I don't buy the Will Levis thing. I don't think he's the guy. I feel like Mike Vrabel has slipped the last few years and he's not getting as much out of his guy. I don't know, man.
Well,
I'm out on the
it's not
Titans.
Mike Vrabel there anymore.
You're right. You're right. So
Yeah,
so it's like, yeah, they
Brian
fire
Callahan.
Vrabel, they hire Brian Callahan. Like the whole thing. I just don't get the whole
It,
thing. And so
it's
I'm out
yeah,
on the Titans. I don't believe it. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I just don't believe they're going to be any good this year.
they're weird, but I had them on my best list only because I think like I wouldn't have liked the Patriots giving that much money to Calvin Ridley because I don't think he would fit what New England does. I think he fits where Tennessee is right now. I look at Tennessee and they have an ex DeAndre Hopkins. Calvin Ridley steps in, he can be your Z, and they just signed Tyler Boyd too, who can play in the slot for you. And I think Ridley and Boyd are a little bit interchangeable in the way they can be used. I like the way that they have addressed that offensive line. They drafted Skronsky last year, Latham this year, and you hire Bill Callahan, which I think is a fantastic move. Uh, Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears actually really like that backfield. Um, Tight end, Chico Conquo, we'll see what we get out of him. I don't love the tight end room, but if the offensive line holds up and can be a top half of the league group,
Yeah.
that's a really good position to develop a young QB. And I think the Titans are at a spot where they saw glimpses from Will Levis and they're trying to figure out what they're going to get from him. And I think they've put themselves in a spot where it's like it's going to be one of two things that happens. Either they can see that Will Levis is good because they've given enough for him to work with, and they can be a competitive team this year in that division. Or you're going to find out pretty quickly that Will Levis is not the guy, and you already have a good infrastructure in place for the next guy that you end up drafting. So I like it on that front. Defensively, yeah, Devontae Set. We'll see what he ends up being in the NFL. I think they're going to be stout. I think they're going to be tough to play. And they added, they traded for L'Jarius Sneed, which I thought was really interesting. It seemed like they were very much like, we think we have built an infrastructure and we're going to go get guys and see what we can turn this team into. Like they added, when it comes to adding veterans in an offseason, you had Sneed, you had Calvin Ridley, you had Tony Pollard, you add Tyler Boyd. I think that's really good. I like that. I think that makes you better. So with just the sheer amount of talent added to this team too, I felt like I couldn't have them off of my best list.
Yeah, and listen, I don't blame you for that. I feel like that definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They also paid L'Jarius Sneed a ton of money as well. So, and look,
Yes.
again, it's just money. You get the salary cap, and the salary cap's way up this year, and so I understand all that. I just feel like, that I don't love the direction they're heading in. So that's all. So, but
Yeah,
I think your points are noted, and I think you're not wrong about that. And I don't blame you for necessarily having them in the top three. I just feel like I didn't get what they were doing. And they're just kind of, I almost feel like they're like, it's like Madden and you just throwing money at people.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if that works.
When I think there's also a world here where it, to a degree, ends up looking like, I don't know, like the 2022 Patriots, where the quarterback play isn't that great and the team's inconsistent. And you got a lot of veterans who are fine, but making more money than they should be, and the defense that's good. And keeps you in games, but you're going to have a hard time winning them. You look at that division, the AFC South. What looks like a lot of good teams. I don't know what the Jaguars are doing, but they got a quarterback, and the Colts are figuring things out, and the Texans looking good, and the Titans could improve and get better and not have a winning record, which in some ways that could be a blessing in disguise for addressing your quarterback situation or other things on that team.
Good point. All right, do you have one more? Or do you want to go to?
Well, the only other one, neither of us ended up with them on our list, I don't think, but the Buffalo Bills, I think deserve a mention here. I was just mentioning them, the offensive coordinator thing, because I never got the offensive coordinator change for them. I thought Ken Dorsey did a better job than Joe Brady, and Dorsey to Cleveland, I think makes at least some sense. And I think the Bills are doing the right moves for the long-term play right now, but they are worse this season.
Yeah, and you get rid of Diggs and Gabe Davis, and again, Diggs had to go. Gabe Davis was just fine; he wasn't great, and so like you add Keon Coleman in there, and you try to add a few more pieces to that receiving core. It's not as good as it was, but who knows?
When we talk about the 2 tight end thing in Vegas too, don't sleep on the Bills 2 tight end thing. Dalton Kincaid was good for them last year, and they have Dawson Knox, and if they're changing their identity, if they're investing in that offensive line too, maybe we just see them put a lot more 2 tight end stuff on the field, and they're going to counter not having Diggs by being able to run the ball more and having 2 tight ends who they can go to. And I don't love their other options, but like Khalil Shakir has been very efficient for them when they've targeted him. And if Curtis Samuel is like the 4th option in your offense, that's fine.
Yeah,
he's like, you can have him in that role. So
I'm
I'm very curious schematically to see how this looks and how they put this all together, because the offense is going to be worse, but I also like some of the pieces, and with the proper development, they might not actually take any kind of significant step back.
True. Good point. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll get into the top 3 when we come back. I promise we'll be a little quicker on the top 3 than we were on the bottom 3, and then we'll get you guys out of here. All right, so one more break and we'll be back. The Celtics are in the playoffs, and there's nothing like the atmosphere of the Garden during a Celtics game. And the easiest way to get in the building is by using the Game Time app. The prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Now, one of the nice things about Game Time is that they have all-in pricing, which means you see the fees up front. They're not hitting you with fees after you've already paid or as you get to the payout screen. They're giving them to you up front so you know exactly what you're paying. They also have the lowest price guarantee. If you find a price lower, they will credit you 110% of the difference. And they give you a seat view before you purchase anything. You can even move your phone around and see how it looks. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. Oh, you want to go first with this, or you want me to go first?
I don't mind going first.
Do it.
I'm gonna let my Michigan homerism fly right off the bat here.
Oh,
LA
baby.
Chargers, one of my top off seasons. You got Jim Harbaugh. I think I had some questions about how he would fit the NFL. I don't think there was a better possible franchise for him, in large part because we all knew what the Chargers have needed for a long time now was a culture reset. How long have the Chargers been a team that's soft, team that's injury prone, a team? Yeah, you go back to the early 2000s with a team that always has a good quarterback and doesn't win games. That's the Chargers. And Jim Harbaugh is going to be the guy that makes you tough, that makes you physical, that invests in all the infrastructure you need, offense and defense, to make sure you're not losing games for dumb reasons. Your offensive line is going to get better. Your defensive line is going to get better. Your special teams are going to get better. You already have a borderline elite quarterback. I don't know how this team's going to look at this year, but just culture-wise, this is exactly what everybody in that building needed. And I love what they did in the draft too, I think. So, yeah, big fan of this Chargers offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those interesting things for me that I didn't love what they did, getting rid of everyone, but at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, but those guys always lose. So it's like Keenan Allen is a great player, and Mike Williams is theoretically a great player, and now Eckler is theoretically a great player, but like, how often do they play? Yeah. And so that's that becomes then the question. And then you draft Joe Alt at number 5, and again, we talked about it. I said it was one of the picks I didn't like the most because I felt as though, as much as I like Joe Alt, you're drafting him to play right tackle, and you could have moved back and gotten Tali Fuaga to play right tackle, who was right tackle, right? And a guy that could have stepped in right away and played right away. Now, is he as good as Joe Alt? No, but you could have probably picked up a first-round pick next year to do that. But, again, they got good players. You got Ladd McConkey, and we'll see. I'm not 100% sold on Ladd McConkey, but we'll see. But then, Jerry's son, Brendan. So I think they did a good job. So it's tough to argue with them being in the top 3. And obviously, you love Harbaugh. I don't love him quite as much, but I do. I like Harbaugh.
Harbaugh's he's a weird human being, but he's very good at coaching football. Yeah. They also added Newtown, Connecticut legend and Michigan legend, and very briefly Patriots legend fullback Ben Mason.
So that's right.
Yeah. Which side note, I remember hearing this story back in the day. As a true freshman at Michigan, I believe he set like their bench press record or something like that. Yeah, I did. I think he played defensive tackle at high school or something like that, and switched to fullback there. I don't remember the full story now, but they're just going to be physical. They're going to run the ball a ton, and then just use that for some play action stuff, and that alone is just going to make them much more sound offensively than they were the last couple of years.
Yep, agreed. By the way, Blorp has jumped into the wrong chat. The Sexiest Patriots podcast. This is not us.
It's all Pat.
Yeah, that's it. That's what people think of when they see me. So, all right. One of my top ones is the Houston Texans. I just feel like the Texans crushed it this year. They found that they had a good thing last year, and they built upon it. They went out and signed Danielle Hunter. They traded for Stephon Diggs, right? They brought in some guys. They drafted Blake Fisher. They drafted, Kate Stover, tight end. And so they drafted a corner, which, by the way, the Kamari Lassiter pick. Did you see Kamari Lassiter today? Who was up on the stand, and he was like, "Coach went to Bama? I didn't know that."
He's a Georgia guy.
It was so good.
I love the SEC rivalries stick into college.
Yeah. So what they did though is take their team that was a playoff team and make them better. And I think that you're looking at it saying, we're going all in on it. We are trying to, improve on where we were and continue to build around our young quarterback. And as much as a problem child as Stephon Diggs is and has been, when things are going good, he's really good. And so why not bring him in and and try to be that guy to kind of push you over the top offensively. And so I love what they did, and they brought in Joe Mixon too, and got rid of Devin Singletary and brought in Joe Mixon, and we'll see how much Joe Mixon has left in the tank. But I do like, I really, really do like what they did, and I feel like they've set themselves up to be successful. And in an AFC South that just isn't that strong. I think that they've really set themselves up to, to kind of rule that division for the next few years.
Yeah, I'm 100% agreed. I don't have a whole lot to add to what you said, but they were also in my top 3 here. They take advantage of the fact that you got a rookie quarterback. You find ways to invest that money around him. I thought they handled that perfectly. I think they took acceptable risks. They drafted Blake Fisher, which I like for them. Bringing in Stephon Diggs, which I like for them. They just added Ben Skoranek, actually, in a trade. The slot receiver / fullback from the Rams.
Yes. Yep.
Who's a fun player to watch. The Danielle Hunter swap out for it didn't end up being a trade, but it was essentially a swap there where Danielle Hunter came to Houston for more money, and the guy, I'm totally forgetting his name, went to Minnesota for a little bit less money. This guy gave New England problems when we played them too. 52 on their defensive front. Can't remember his name. But yeah. But no, I thought they handled this offseason exactly how a team in their position should have handled it. Jonathan Grenard.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
That's who it was that they lost. But they swapped him out for what they clearly think is a better player. They're willing to pay more money in, and they took all the right risks.
Yep. All right. How about you?
My last one, we both had the Texans. My last one was the Titans. So I'm out of my top 3.
Done. All right, I got 2 more. I have 2 more in my top 3. I had the Steelers as a fringe top 3, but they weren't actually in my top 3. Second for me is the Bengals. I think that the Bengals really, really did a nice job of kind of building around what they already have. And then what they did and look at, we don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins. We don't really know what's going to happen with Trey Hendrickson either. But you're competing right now. And so the idea is just hold on to those guys. Just don't let them go for nothing, right? And so I think that was smart of them to do. They hold on to those guys. They draft Amarius Mims, which I love. You bring in a few defensive guys, Sheldon Rankins and Geno Stone, and then they drafted Jermaine Burton. And Jermaine Burton, look, he's been a problem child everywhere he goes. You let Tyler Boyd walk, but you have Higgins and Chase. If you can get this kid's head screwed on straight, you're talking about a home run draft pick in the 3rd round. A home run draft pick in the 3rd round. And to me, that should excite you if you're a Bengals fan. Now, again, I mean, whatever, but to me, that's an exciting pick for them, where you look at it and think he could have some real impact. And of course, then they draft Chris Jenkins, your guy from Michigan as well, adding on to the defensive line, to team up with Sheldon Rankins there. So I just think what they're trying to do was smart. And Eric All, too, who could be a guy that, he's an Iowa tight end. I mean, you never know, right? Those Iowa tight ends, they come into the league and they end up doing well. So he may not work out, but he certainly might. So
it is funny to me that he gets the label Iowa tight end when he played almost his entire career at Michigan.
Hey, listen,
but he gets lumped in with the other ones.
That's right. He just got that Iowa. You sprinkle that Iowa fairy dust on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the Bengals. My only issue with them is that I think there's a lot of risk in it. You draft a tackle who's very boom bust. You draft a wide receiver who's boom bust. They still really haven't resolved the T. Higgins situation.
Right.
And I don't know how some of the quotes from Joe Burrow coming out about where he's at in his rehab process are a wee bit concerning, talking about where his hand is.
Yeah.
So I don't hate their offseason. I just think, and this is especially when you're now paying the quarterback, you got to pay the guys around him. It's an appropriate place to start taking some of those risks because if they pay off, they can really set you up. If Burton and the tackle there figured out for you, you're in really, really good shape the next couple of years.
Yeah.
If they don't, and Higgins just walks for nothing in free agency next year, and that's it, you're in a very different place.
Yep. All right, my last one. Oh, it's a little bit of homerism, but I have to do it. New England Patriots. Got to do it.
Fair.
And look, it's not because the Patriots are going to be a playoff team this year. It's not, right? But the thing about what the Patriots did is that they kept all of their young, good players. They made it a priority to bring back the guys that were playing well and that were keeping them at least afloat. Now, again, are they going to win the Super Bowl or even make the playoffs this year? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I like the idea. You take a swing at the quarterback at number 3. You take a swing at 2 wide receivers. You take a lottery ticket on Joe Milton in the 6th round, right? You take another lottery ticket in Bell in the 7th round, right? And I think what's funny about Bell is that him and Johnny Wilson both dropped because nobody knew what to do with those guys, right? And I think Bell has an interesting case to be made where you look at it and say, okay, I like that, And so, and look, the Patriots didn't really bring in anyone where you're like, oh, wow, they didn't wow anyone. But again, you do what you have to do, right? And I think that's one of those things for me where I look at it and say, okay, I get it. And they tried to move up because they wanted Leggett and they didn't get him. And I think, and sometimes that happens. It is what it is. You couldn't move up and you wanted to move up to 32 and the Bills blocked you from moving up to 32. And they took less to move back to 33 instead of 34. And so what are you going to do? It is what it is. And I think part of that too is that they wanted Keon Coleman. And they probably had a feeling that if they moved back to 34, that Carolina was going to take him at 33. And so they looked at it and said, well, yeah, we can move back, but we could either take Coleman here or we could move back to 33, pick up extra draft capital, and take Coleman at 33, which is the guy that we want anyways. Whereas if we move to 34, he's not going to be there. And so, that's one of those things where it's like we could go back and forth and argue about that. But I think what they did was good. You needed to do a culture shift. You needed the change. Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. And again, it might not work. It's the same thing with the quarterback. It might not work, but it had to be done.
You got to take the risk at some point. Yeah.
And, here we are taking that chance. And I like what I've seen from this regime so far.
Yeah. I also say a comment about how, you don't mind taking this swing. I'm assuming it's talking about this discussion, but they need to be right or it's going to set the team way back if they're wrong. They just had it, the 3rd pick in the draft. They won 4 games last year. Right. They are set way back. It doesn't get much worse than that when we're talking about things. They're a tiebreaker away from having the number 2 overall pick in the draft. That doesn't get much worse. And the only reason I didn't put New England in my top 3, they were the next team out for me because I think moving on from Bill to Mayo was the correct decision. I like it, but also there's a lot of risk there, and that was enough to kind of have me shy away from it. And I like the moves in the draft. I think there were a lot of reaches in there, which I'm okay because I like the fits. Yeah. But it's a riskier approach. You are essentially betting on knowing something that nobody else, not one of the other 31 teams, has picked up on. And you can find guys that way. Joe Thuney, was a great find that way.
Yeah. Yep.
So most of the time it's not going to go that way for you. So hopefully it goes the way it went with Joe Thuney and not the way it went with Jordan Richards.
Tyquan Thornton. I mean, and again, I think then the question for me becomes, what did the league think about those guys?
Yeah.
The consensus board may have been all over the place, but what did the league think of those guys? Jalen Polk, everyone looked at it and said, well, this is a disaster. And this is, a huge reach for Polk. And it's like, well, really? I don't know. Did the league view him higher? And as soon as he gets drafted, you hear league guys that are keyed in, saying things like, love this pick. This guy's a baller. He's a great player. You take a massive reach on a guy like Tyquan Thornton. No one said that. There was not one guy saying they love that pick, right? And so they're not just gassing the Patriots up in that situation. They actually did like the pick. Now, again, doesn't mean it's going to work out. But I think that made sense for them to do. And again, and all of this stuff is what it is, right? And Nagan says Polk was reach to you. But I don't know what that means. Would Polk have gone 40? And maybe,
based on I think Polk was a reach. He was a reach of probably about a round, which I think when you factor in need and scheme fit can be appropriate. I don't necessarily have an opinion. Caden Wallace was a little bit more outside the bounds of what you want to do. Layden Robinson was about a round, which especially when you get to that was early day 3, I think is totally acceptable.
right.
Reaching isn't some unforgivable sin. You just open yourself up to a little bit more risk than you might otherwise do. And the other risk here is, if Polk isn't good or whatever ends up happening, if somebody else who's taken in between ends up being really good, that's where you might start second guessing yourself. But no, I liked the scheme fits of the guys that they picked.
Yeah.
And
also, there are people in the chat saying, we should have taken Cooper DeJean at 34. And look, I was on board with that. We talked about that. I was on board about that.
Didn't we do a mock on the
we
pod?
100% did. Matter of fact, my final mock draft, I had the Patriots taking May at 3 and then DeJean at 34. I think we did it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. The point is for me is that I don't like. What are we doing? Like your wide receivers are terrible. Your corners are pretty good. Now, could you use another corner? Absolutely. Could you use a really good corner like Cooper DeJean? I think Cooper DeJean's a very good corner. Sure. But what are we talking about? And so that's the thing for me.
Well, in the tough part of all of this is that it's hard to justify taking Cooper DeJean over a receiver and need a receiver.
Correct.
But if the receiver you take isn't good, and DeJean is, then you're going to look back and say, well, we still would have taken a good defensive player over the bad offensive player.
Right.
So it's just, it's for drafting development. And that's where, I think I like Polk. I don't think he's going to be a bad player. I don't know if he'll ever be an elite one, but he's got good hands. He's got good feel for zone route running. He's a good enough runner against man coverage. He might not ever be a deep threat, but I think, I'm going to use the term high floor here. I have a high floor on him because I think he has all of the base technical abilities you need in an NFL receiver. He has the size. He has the catch radius. Mm-hmm. He might only ever be a 400 or 500 yard per season guy. That could happen. But I see that being a pretty reasonable outcome. I don't see it getting a whole lot worse than that because I think the worst case for him is probably he gets on the field as your third best wide receiver. And that's fine. I think you've boosted the floor on this team with this offseason for New England. The other thing I'm going to say here is this. On New England's offseason, one of my other points of hesitation on putting them in the top 3, I love bringing Mike Onwenu back. I do have some hesitation about his fit in an outside zone running scheme. Right. I just want to see it. That's what I think the spot where he struggled the most. He also struggled the most while also not getting the best coaching there. Should be getting better coaching as somebody who's going to be running that scheme. So I think you just hope, better coaching, repping it more often in practice. It's going to look better. I have faith in those guys, but there is conceivably a world where we look back in a year and we say, man, this guy definitely wasn't a scheme fit. We signed him anyway. Now what do we do? It just isn't working. What happens now? And obviously, hopefully we don't end up there. But.
Right. So hopefully people will be wrong. The people that want Cooper DeJean over Jalen Polk, hopefully you're wrong. But who knows? So, But anyways, all right, that's it. That's all we got. That's our top three, our bottom three. We had some agreements, we had some disagreements, but that's okay. I don't know what your question was, old man mob. What did you say? Post game? No. I don't know. I'm not sure. He asked a question.
You got about 3 seconds to get your question back in the chat here, old man mob. Oh, yeah, they are running outside zone. Yes, what system they're going to run? Yeah, they're doing outside zone. The players are talking about it. That's what they were practicing.
Yeah. So, and look, maybe they run the outside zone, maybe they don't. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to be everything, but
in Cleveland, it was kind of outside zone was the main thing, and then duo was your counter to it.
Right.
So for those who don't know what they are, offseason is a good time to explain. Outside zone means that you're trying to run plays outside towards where the tackle is, and all the offensive linemen are going to block in the same direction, but they kind of they let the defender decide if he wants to go inside or outside of where they are, and they try to make the defender stick to that direction. And if you do that, ideally a hole will open up somewhere. You just don't know where it's going to be because somebody's going to, go where they shouldn't go, and there's going to be a hole. And the running back basically has to be patient, wait for the hole to open up, and then hit it with a lot of speed. Ramondre Stevenson has experience with it. Cole Strange was a really good outside guy. And then duo is something that's used as a counterpunch off of it. Duo means that you're going to have a pair of double team blocks on the inside of your offensive line. And what that means is when you go outside zone, a lot of the way defenses will counter that is to bring a lot of guys onto the line of scrimmage and be super aggressive and penetrate so that those holes shrink and you can get to the running back while he's trying to be patient and look for something. But when you do that and you're trying to play that aggressively, it also means you're not going to have as many linebackers back. So if you can have some double teams on defensive tackles right in the middle of the line, you can create holes there and have a ton of room at the second level. And that's what the Browns did last year, and it was very effective. And they mixed in some other stuff. Every team runs everything.
Right.
But it's not just the Browns, like the Rams, a team that has been known for this. The 49ers, a team that has been known for outside zone, have been going back to more power blocking schemes because defenses have gotten a little bit smaller and more aggressive with a focus on penetrating. And now they have this counterpunch that works really well against it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if my dad hasn't fallen asleep and is still listening, he knows how I feel about the stretch play. Drives me flipping crazy. And so it's going to take some getting used to if they're running outside zone, especially if they're, not coached up right on it like they weren't a few years ago. So, but I'm going to trust in what they're doing. I'm going to trust in what they're doing.
When it works, it looks so good. If you're a Patriots fan, you want to think outside zone, think back to that Broncos game on Sunday Night Football in the snow when Brock Osweiler was playing for them back in 2015, and New England's defense just couldn't stop C.J. Anderson all night long. That was all those stretch zone runs, and we didn't have an answer for it. And that's why that I still remember that game-winning run in overtime, the only snow game we ever lost.
Oh God! Yeah, that was horrifying.
Yeah,
horrifying.
Shout out Chris Harper.
Oh God, no! Do not shout out Chris Harper. Thank you very much. But yeah. Anyways, also, TD asked about Joe Milton. We talked about this already, but Joe Milton, I called him a lottery ticket earlier. That's what he is. He's a lottery ticket. I mean, the guy's got an outrageous arm, great athleticism, has absolutely no idea where the ball's going. I don't know if he can actually play quarterback in the NFL, but if he could ever figure it out, holy crap. So why not take a shot in the sixth round?
Might have the biggest arm in the NFL when he comes into the league, and he's not a good deep thrower because he doesn't know where it's going.
Right. So
he's a good runner too. He's physical, good athlete. Yeah.
So to me, it's you take a shot because why not? Especially that late in the draft. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Who cares? It's a late 6th round pick. It makes no difference. But if it does work out, then you're talking about a guy that could be, a really, really good quarterback in the NFL, which is great for you if Drake May doesn't work out. It's still great for you if Drake May does work out. And so, either way is fine. So, but anyways, all right. That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah.
We're getting out of here. It's late. So
And we're gonna recap the schedule on
we
Thursday.
are, the schedule comes out Wednesday. So we'll be back on Thursday, recapping the schedule. Most likely Thursday, I would think. I don't know about. I feel like Wednesday night. Well, we'll figure it out.
Celtics are on Wednesday night. I feel like no Boston sports Thursday night. It's a normal
Yeah,
slot.
I think it makes sense. And we don't need to do an instant reaction on the schedule or anything like that. Give everyone a day to digest what's going on, and then we'll go from there.
It does sound like what do you call it? Patriots are opening the season on the road, which I'm not shocked about.
Sounds like it, which is nice because my sister planned my goddaughter's christening for that weekend. So
yeah,
it's the only weekend she can get.
It also sounds like there have been rumors about them going to London. I don't know
7 allegedly,
but that has since been pulled. I'm forgetting the name. I always forget his name. Ben Peltzford.
Yeah.
He had said that earlier, but he actually pulled that back right as we started this show.
So what's interesting is that Babs on the mic there released like what he. Now the thing is that I don't know if he's getting actual intel or
probably not.
I kind of feel like that's not the case, right? And he just kind of said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking," but I'm curious about that. So
yeah. And then
so we'll see.
Yeah, it should be a what do you call it? I'm excited to see where some of these games end up. I'll throw this out there. I think my guess is they're gonna open the season at home against Seattle week 2. Only based on the fact that we typically play NFC teams early in the year, and based on that, just a couple Twitter accounts that like track all the rumors, and according to them, Seattle's on the road weeks 2 and 4. We play Seattle home this year. We play NFC teams early. Seattle's probably on the road that week, so that's my official prediction.
I like that. Also, we want to go to Chicago, but it can't be week 2. Can't be week 2. It's too early for me. Week 4, week 5, something like that. That's what I'm hoping for. So
yeah,
if it was week 5, that'd be great because week 5 I think is the long weekend. Either week 5 or week 6 is the long weekend. So
I bet they're gonna put it. I hope they put it late in the season, honestly, because I bet they want to make sure it's going to be Drake May.
That makes the most sense is put it late in the season because then it's May and Caleb Williams,
or like the week before Thanksgiving type of thing.
Yeah.
Or early November feels like the right spot for that game.
I agree with you.
Cold night in Soldier Field.
So we'll see. But anyways, we'll be back on Thursday talking about the schedule, and then we'll go from there. So thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it, and have a great night, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.